This is a video that I really honestly thought I would never make. This is a detailed overview. Please investigate all of this for yourself. Do not trust anyone, especially me. The Protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion is a forgery. It is a fraud. It is a piece of political propaganda for, and paid for, by, in part, the Russian Tsar. In 1903, it showed up first in Russia. By the way, Henry Ford had 500,000 copies of it printed in the United States, and later said it was a forgery and retracted it, and was ordered to by a court. So even Henry Ford changed his mind on the Protocols. The Protocols, many scholars believe, is what made Hitler and gave him the justification for the Holocaust. It is believed to have been, in part of the anti-Jewish pogroms in the Russian Empire, which thousands of Jews died and had to flee the country. Now, source material for the Protocols is in part from a book called Machiavelli and Montesquieu, Dialogue in Hell. It's an obviously fictional book, which is a 1864 political satire by Maurice Joly, which is essentially about Napoleon III. And a chapter of another well-known anti-Semitic novel by Hermann Goethe, German novel, by the way, that was translated into Russian. Another source has been shown to be a book by Theodore Herzl, which was called Zionist Protocols, in its translation into French and Russian from German, but says nothing about advocating for Zionism and resembles a parody of Herzl's ideas. The Protocols are some of the earliest versions of the Jewish global conspiracy, or the Jewish global banking conspiracy, or the Zionist global banking conspiracy. Choose any of those things you want. It's the earliest versions of it. In fact, it's what invented it. The Protocols, talk about a general plan to take over the world by Jewish people. It was first shown as a fraud or a forgery in 1921, but was relentlessly pushed by people like Nazi sympathizer and economic ally of Germany, Henry Ford, which, by the way, was the enemy of the working man. He created the assembly line, which took skilled machinists and turned them into replaceable cogs in the assembly line machine, devaluing labor. He was an anti-labor guy. He was not a good man. And by the way, he retracted. He had to admit that they were forgeries and retract all the things that he had said about the Protocols. So look up Henry Ford and look that up. It's quite funny. I found a good table of all of the 24 protocols, their titles and themes on Wikipedia. A lot of the information I'm giving you today is from Wikipedia, but not only. Go to Wikipedia. That gives you a nice general overview. It'll give you some names to go research. Please do so. Note, the Protocols are virtually silent on the Muslim issue. And even that Muslim even exists, that Islam even exists. Now, that's a pretty fucking big deal when we have gotten to the point where, as we look at 2015, it's the largest religion in the world. It has the most members. But the Protocols of the Elders of Zion never mentions Islam. It never mentions Muslims. Oh, and by the way, Muslims use the Protocols as anti-Jewish propaganda in their countries. It makes no mention at all. Never says the word Muslim, never says the word Islam. Hilarious. Let me go on. They use it as a proof of a Jewish... And by the way, Israel is only mentioned in vague terms as well. It's not mentioned where it is right now. It's not mentioned in any detail. And that's one of the tricks, is that if something was you were going to write something in 1902, roughly, is when supposedly it was written, you would write about Muslims because they were going to be a big issue for you in the Middle East when you decided that you wanted Israel. It mentions Palestine, I think, once or twice, but it doesn't go into any detail about where any plans were to set up Zion. It's only now that Israel was founded in 1948 after World War II that the Zionist conspiracy, the Protocols, have come out, and now they've pinned it on Israel. It's a misrepresentation of even what these forged, shitty documents say. And if you don't believe me, look it up for yourself. Now, what was funny to me was, like I said, that Muslims actually use this as justification. Check out also something called the Russo-Japanese War, which was lost by the Russians. The Protocols were used to justify why the Russians lost in that. The loss of the Russian war against the Japanese was blamed entirely on the Jews, or enough on the Jews that people actually bought into that shit. Then in 1917, the Russian Revolution started, and White Russia Russians who were rich and didn't like the Bolsheviks and didn't want communism went west, and they took the protocols with them. They were rich, and then they used the protocols in a way of discrediting the Bolshevik revolutions. Now, one of the places that White Russian community settled was in Texas. One of the huge places. Texas, Louisiana, all of those states, that was because they were oil people. Some of them had actually owned oil fields, etc., in Russia, and fled the Bolshevik Revolution because they didn't want their businesses captured by the Bolsheviks, so they got out of there. Plus, a lot of them were going to have their heads cut off, like the Czars like the Romanovs ended up having their head cut off. Okay, so they were rich, and they, like I said, a lot of them settled west, and I think that's where the genesis of it is in Texas, the White Russian community who brought the protocols with them from Russia, from the Bolshevik Revolution, who were anti-Lenin. They didn't want Lenin to be recognized, his country to be recognized by the West. That was, they eventually wanted America to go to war so they could go back to their country and get their land back and their property. The protocols took anti-Semitism out of the inner circles of power and made it international. They took it out of just we're sitting around talking about how we don't like the Jews or how we think about them or what we think about them as a race, and they made it international. It's truly disgusting. It's so vague, the protocols are. It conforms to every theory, left, right, Christian, Muslim, etc. Like I said before. The first time it came into the American scene, though, was the Red Scare between 1917 and 1920, roughly. It was actually called the Red Bible or the Bolsheviks Manifesto. And again, this came from the South, the hard right in the South. The Middle East really didn't get the protocols until 1951. So a lot of people like to, if they want to try to pin it on, say, Muslims or, say, international whatever, that's just simply not true, because the Middle East really didn't have them until 1951. It translated and put out in a mass way. And in 1935, before the Holocaust was even shown to have happened, a Swiss court labeled them as a fraud. They labeled them as phony and as a forgery in 1935. Hitler refers to the protocols in his book Mein Kampf and made the protocols to be studied in German schools. It served the Nazis' genocide extremely well. This global elite of Zionist Jews trying to take over the world, so that'll justify us to kill them all. And when revisionists and deniers say that the Jews were organized in any real meaningful way, that's just simply not true. Go look in Germany. Go take a look at what the Jews really controlled, what percentage they were, and what really happened to them. They were totally taken by surprise by the Nazis. I'm starting to come from all the reading I've been doing. I'm starting to believe that the Nazis just shot. Nobody thought the Nazis would go that far. Even if the protocols were around, they weren't taken seriously. And the Nazis turned them into fact, and that's what really generated the hate towards the Jewish people, and really is what created the Holocaust. People have used these are some of the people who have used the protocols that you might be familiar with. People like Kent Hovind, just a piece of shit. The Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, Gaddafi, King Faisal of Saudi Arabia, Sadat of Egypt, Assad's dad in Syria. These men are kings of people, except for Ken Hovind, who they oppress. They are the oligarchs. They blame the Jew to distract from the real enemy, them, the oligarchy. The kings, the people, the British. The British should have... how in the fuck does the royal family still exist? And don't give me that they're Jewish. Don't ever fucking tell me that they're Jewish, because that is not proven. It's not provable, but let me get sidetracked. It's funny how the hard right in this country, which is Christian, by the way, agree with the hard fundamentalists of the Islamic religion. It's not a coincidence. I believe it's design. Notice it's all places that have oil. Anyway. And the alleged progression and prognostication that the protocols supposedly show are not from Jewish meetings of the powerful and their minutes, but is only really pushed by oligarchs like the kings of the Muslim religion throughout the Middle East and the right-wing JBS Christians in this country, who have had this pushed by the KKK, Ernst Zundel, David Duke, and many, many other hard-right authoritarian fascists like the Koch brothers. Now, I don't have any direct proof or evidence that the Koch brothers are paying to push the protocols of Zion, but they don't have to. Because Christian conservatives, while supporting Israel in some cases, really fucking hate Jews and are anti-Semitic. It's a part of and creation of the Roman Empire, I believe. It's a war against the Maccabean Jews. Jews killed Jesus, right? Oh, but Jesus was a Jew. So, huh? It's ridiculous to think the Jews killed Christ. It was Rome, the Roman Empire. And then they became the British Empire, and that became the United States Empire. And never fucking forget where the epicenter of the financial world is really. The city of London, and to a lesser extent, Wall Street in our great city of New York. So the protocols serve a purpose today. They allow lazy, stupid, conspiracy asshole theorists to blame Zionists instead of the real enemy, fascists, kings, oligarchs. They are the enemy, not the Jew, not the fucking Zionists. The powerful are our enemies, not Christians, not Jews, not Muslims, not Zionists, not communists, not Marxists, not globalists. The power structure who we know control us and control the world through the military-industrial complex, and they mind control us through television, religion, and school. That is what I believe is really the purpose of the Protocols of Zion. Plus, one of the protocols that I find funny is, more than one, is that they push gold and a gold standard. I mean, you can't make that shit up.